Good evening, Houdat Nation, and happy Wednesday on a Thursday to our Bayou Blitz family. Here we are again, Brendan Boylan and myself, Bob Rose, showing our immense power to move days of the week, giving you your Wednesday podcast on a Thursday. But I am indeed Bob Rose, co-host of your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is your other co-host of your Bayou Blitz podcast, Brendan Boylan. Happy Wednesday on a Thursday, Brendan.
Yeah, Wednesday on a Thursday. I swear we've done a pretty good job of keeping Wednesday on a Wednesday lately, but
Feels like it.
it feels like it. I'll have to check the analytics on that one. I'm not sure what the analytical data will tell us, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job lately. So thanks for joining us and tuning in just a day late. We'll talk about a handful of different things. Obviously, getting closer to preseason week 2 than we are to what was preseason week 1. It's starting to feel like football's in the air. The fall sports are starting to feel in the air between college football, pro football. You know, the NBA released their schedule today, so there's a lot of good things going on in the world of sports. But, you know, to be honest, Bob, and go off rails and off topic just a little bit, is like we actually were fortunate this summer to have, and I know you're not a soccer person, but to have Copa America and the Euros and then the Olympics. There wasn't this lull like there usually is. Like there was usually something on TV to watch, something to follow, something to keep you entertained that wasn't baseball. And for you baseball purists out there, I'm sorry. Like I grew up watching the Yankees and the Mets being in the New Jersey area. Like that's what I did over the summers at my grandparents. But as I've gotten older, it is not the most entertaining thing to watch on TV. Can I go to a game in person? Absolutely. Can I watch it on TV? Can I follow a sport for 160 games and really care about every single game? I think that's the biggest problem. But back to football. Don't need to get into that conversation. And actually, you know what? This is a good segue into the more games you add in the NFL, the less I care about every single game.
Yeah.
Same goes with any sport. The more that there is, the less that you care because it's like, oh, well, they just got a chance to make it up the next game. You know, in the next game, in the next game. And, you know, you guys know I love the NBA. It runs a long time, too. I mean, 82 games is a long, long time. Well, going to the Saints in the preseason is the one thing that the NFL, I guess, did right was shorten the preseason. I don't know. That's kind of a debatable thing because I feel bad for the guys fighting to make the roster because they lose one of those games. I do like the fact that all the cuts are at the end now because you don't have guys getting, you know, cut halfway through that, you know, if they had another practice or two, maybe they do show you something or maybe somebody gets hurt and they're right there to, you know, kind of step up and do their thing. But regardless, the Saints had a preseason game this week. Starters only played about a series when it comes to the offensive side. I got to see a lot of Jake Haener, got to see a handful of Spencer Rattler. I guess we'll start there. As much as Bob, if you're watching this live, Bob's face says, I don't want to talk about this. If you're listening to it after the fact, sorry, you can't see Bob's face saying, I really don't want to talk about that. So I guess I'll start. Look, I'm really tired of every single day comments, questions, concerns, and Bob more so than myself probably. But it's like every day, it's like Derek Carr had a good day. Derek Carr had a bad day. Derek Carr had a good series. Derek Carr had a bad series. Derek Carr went up 11 for 11 with multiple touchdown passes. Derek Carr nearly threw 3 interceptions. Like it's one of those things where it's like I'm really tired of the whole Derek Carr thing. And then even more so, I mean, kind of humorous, kind of annoying was I don't even know the guy's Twitter handle. and I don't want to give him the attention because he already got plenty of it for putting out that fake report that the Vikings were interested in Derek Carr because the Saints view Spencer Rattler. Bob and I have been talking about this all summer. We've talked about how excruciatingly tiresome it gets to discuss this week in and week out. Derek Carr's the starting quarterback. That's the way it's going to be. Derek Carr, not super impressive in his limited playing time in week one. Some of that may be because of the offensive line, and we'll get to that. I like the resilience of Jake Haener. You know, I really liked the quote that he gave talking about, or being asked about, the removal of the rare form of skin cancer that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back as quickly as he did, and having this quote essentially saying, like, I'm in a fight and I can't afford to miss time. And he's absolutely right. And I thought he played very well. Obviously, Spencer Rattler stole the headlines because of the drive to kick the game-winning field goal. Fair or not, that's just how it goes. I still think Jake Haener has the upper hand.
Yeah.
I think Haener looks cleaner. I think the mechanics have been cleaned up. I think a lot more than people are wanting to give him credit for. And I know it's a backup quarterback and he's not going to steal the headlines. And that's not going to be like the main piece that Bob writes about tomorrow. But it's an idea, Bob. There you go. But I really do think if you look at what Haener has done in the offseason, after having kind of a rocky start to his NFL career, being suspended and not being around, I think the mechanics have been cleaned up a little bit. He is not looking like a rookie, which, I mean, are things you want to see out of a guy who's going into his second year, and is noticeably ahead of Spencer Rattler, which makes sense in things you want to see out of your second-year quarterback. You don't want to see a rookie quarterback coming in and outshining a guy that you drafted a year ago. All those things are great, I think, for Spencer Rattler and for Spencer Rattler fans. And again, you guys know, if you watch the show, I was very happy when the pick was made because why not take a swing on a guy?
Mm-hmm.
Rattler played okay. He did enough to put the team in the position to win the football game against third stringers. There's your asterisk right there. Against third stringers. Against guys that a lot of them won't be in the league or will be on practice squads. But he did enough, right? And at the end of the day, if you're one of those people and you want to look at it that way, he did enough to win the game. Great. He did. And that's got to be a big boost of confidence for a young quarterback as well to go into your first preseason game and do enough to come out with the result. Regardless of whether the game means or anything or not, you're a competitor. That's what you want to see. But this whole thing is being blown out of proportion, Bob. Like, again, it's a third-string quarterback going against third stringers on the defensive side, and he had an okay game. I liked the ability to roll out of the pocket, scramble with his legs, lower his shoulder, get in the end zone. I like that. You know, that's not something New Orleans has ever really had or in recent memory. You know, Archie Manning is the last one that comes to mind of a guy who moved. Maybe I'm forgetting someone. I mean, Aaron Brooks could a little bit if he needed to, but you know, I've said for years I wanted a quarterback that could at least show a little bit of mobility. I like those things, but again, guys, Derek Carr's the guy. Derek Carr's the guy. Derek Carr's the guy. Derek Carr is the guy. How many different ways and inflections of my voice can I say that until people start to understand it, Bob?
It doesn't matter because people have their own minds made up. They want literally anyone on the face of the earth except Derek Carr. I am fairly convinced that if Jamarcus Russell announced his return to the league tomorrow, that there would be a portion of fans, especially LSU fans, that the Saints need to sign Jamarcus Russell and cut Derek Carr. That's just fact. And you know, Derek Carr wasn't overly impressive against Arizona. Part of that was the abysmal play of the protection or lack thereof in front of him. But that's only a minor excuse. Yeah, that's a key one. But yeah, Carr showed me in his limited reps the same kind of things he did last year. He wasn't delivering the ball to the receivers on time. Wasn't getting to the ball to the receivers in stride. I'm not going to be overly critical of his ability to read defenses because everything was very vanilla on both sides of the ball. And what you said before about the practice updates, that wasn't a stab at our John Hendricks or anybody else. That's more a stab at the fans who were being critical of it, saying that the media, us, John, Nick, whoever else has an agenda. No, idiots. We're just telling you literally what happened and what didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, to anybody who asks me, is Derek Carr's job in danger? Is Dennis Allen still the coach? If that answer is yes, then Derek Carr's job is not in danger. But I know everybody wants to talk about the Rattler in particular, but Rattler and Haener together. And okay, we will. I thought both quarterbacks had nice outings against the Cardinals. Both showed decent poise for their inexperience. Haener looked far more comfortable, night and day more comfortable than what he did last year. And while everybody wants to give Rattler roses for leading that game-winning drive, remember, Haener led a 2-minute drive of his own at the end of the first half. And this was against players who are almost all of them are going to be in the league, with many of them getting significant playing time in 3 weeks, unlike who Rattler played against. I thought Haener moved around well. Haener delivered the ball well. Everybody loves Rattler over Haener because not everybody, but many people love Rattler over Haener because Rattler's just got the arm talent. Now, Spencer Rattler has the most talented arm of anybody on the Saints roster. There's no question about that. And I love his swagger, Spencer's swagger, love his confidence. I said that on draft night too. But neither Spencer Rattler nor Jake Haener are ready to take over an NFL franchise. Remember, we're talking about a 4th-round pick in Haener, a 5th-round pick in Rattler for a reason. And like Alan Ulrich and I talked about the other night, I realize everybody loves to bring up Tom Brady, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, among other, literally only a couple other names, as late day 3 or late round draft choices that have had or are having success in the league. I get all that. But for every Purdy, Brady, Dak, Cousins, for every one of those guys, there are hundreds and hundreds, plural, of quarterbacks who were drafted in that span, in that range, who literally did nothing in the NFL. That's A. B, no, none of them, not Dak, not Purdy, not Brady, not Cousins, not Tony Romo, who was not drafted at all. None of those guys got a chance unless the starters in front of them got hurt. They didn't replace them because of performance. They didn't, in their rookie years, it wasn't a situation of, Kyle Shanahan saying, you know what, Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance aren't good enough. I'm going to turn the ball over to Mr. Irrelevant to save our season. None of that happened, guys. All of them got in the lineup because of injuries in front of them. Cousins, Robert Griffith, Brady, of course, Drew Bledsoe, Cousins. I mentioned Cousins already. Dak Prescott because of Tony Romo because of Drew Bledsoe, and Tom Brady also because of Drew Bledsoe. All of them got hurt, which is to say that Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler both, no matter how well they play this preseason, they are the emergency plan, period, and end of story. Now, again, I go back to I like what I saw out of both Jake and Spencer. Would not surprise me if Spencer was the second quarterback to see action over Haener against San Francisco. I think that's how close this competition is, where the reps are going to be flip-flopped in each preseason game. Guys, don't read anything into that. It's just the coaches wanting Spencer Rattler to get a look against slightly better competition. But both got, yeah, I do agree with you, Brendan. I do think that Jake Haener, if the season were to start tomorrow, Jake Haener would most likely be the number 2 quarterback, and Spencer Rattler the number 3. This is a legitimate battle, though, that's going to carry on through the rest of the preseason at the number 2 position. But I think it's very encouraging, that both quarterbacks played well enough that I don't feel like Clint Kubiak or Dennis Allen is sitting there thinking, man, I think we better go out and try to get a veteran backup with a little bit of starting experience in case something happens to Derek. No, I think Jake and Spencer are both progressing well enough in the system, that if the season had to start this coming weekend, that the DA and Kubiak would feel fairly confident, in turning to either Haener or Rattler should something happen to Carr injury wise. Not going to be performance wise, no matter how much you guys want it. And I'm not sitting here singing the praises of Derek Carr. I don't think he is an elite quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. Far from it. But he's your Saints starter this year. He's not the long-term answer. I acknowledge that. I still don't think the long-term answer is on this roster at all. But that's another story for another time. Derek Carr is your starter. Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener are going to battle it out for number 2. And the best we can hope for as fans is that both of them develop nicely where the team feels comfortable if they had to turn to them. And maybe, just maybe, you get that lottery winning ticket and get the next Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott, a late round pick. Should we count on it? I wouldn't bet your kid's college fund on it, folks, just statistically speaking. But right now, let's just continue. Let's just hope that we continue to see the development from both quarterbacks that we have seen. It's been nice progress from both Haener and Rattler.
I'm glad you said what you did about injuries. I will take it a step further and, of course, bring it back to a hobby of both of ours. And I bring this up a lot, but card collecting, right? So card collectors invest stupid money into quarterbacks every year. Like stupid money. And if you guys don't believe me or you don't know anything about the hobby, just look it up. Look up how much money people spend on rare variations of rookie cards for quarterbacks that may never see the field, right? Prime example, I guess last year, the year before, a buddy of mine had a Desmond Ridder autographed rookie card numbered to 10. They only made 10 copies of the thing. He got offered somewhere in the range of $1,500 for the card.
Wow.
And he said, no, I'm going to wait through the season, hope he has a good year, and see what happens. He had no money into the card. Yeah, I know a lot of people. Bob's face is saying it all, like, oh my God, you should have just taken the money. Yeah, in hindsight, he should have.
Well, someone needs to buy that man a personalized jersey that says dumbass on the back of it.
There you go. Perfect. If you know who you are if you're listening. So anyway, that card is worth like $50 now, like max.
It's still, that's $49 more than I'd pay for it.
Right, exactly. But that Desmond Ridder is a prime example of a guy who was drafted late, got a chance. People are going crazy for Aiden O'Connell, and I know he's going to be the starter now too. But just looking at how much money people lose every year because they throw a ton of money into rookie cards of guys who just never see the field. Cards weren't really popular back, or they weren't as popular as valuable in like 2015. But like, Garrett Grayson is another guy where a lot of people are like, oh, that's going to be the successor for Drew Brees, and we know how that ended. It ended very well, very great. I'm just kidding. I don't want to spend any more time on preseason week 1, so let's go to preseason week 2.
Okay.
Because that's more fun. We got the quarterback talk out. I feel like I don't know. I feel like every week we have to dedicate like 50 to 20 minutes of the show to just quarterbacks. Like maybe when we get into the season, we don't have to. Knock on wood. But yeah, I think we should go to the second part of what people are seeing at the bottom of their screen, which is concerns regarding the team, and then we can kind of segue into the second week of the preseason. I think the biggest concern is pretty obvious, right? Do we want to just go ahead and knock that out before we get into kind of our more like nitpicky stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so the biggest concern for this team is clearly running. I'm just kidding. It's offensive line. Which is weird. And you and I have talked about this on this show before. We've talked about it in articles, even when I was still writing, and how this whole thing kind of got, flipped, turned upside down. Not in a good way, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but like the opposite way. Because just a few years ago, or what feels like just a few years ago, the Saints were regarded as maybe the best offensive line in football, or right there with the Dallas Cowboys as the strongest offensive lines in the league. And just like that, all of a sudden, both of those teams, the Cowboys and the Saints, are looking around. They're like, what the hell happened to our offensive line? Like, where'd they go? Because both teams are really struggling outside of maybe like a piece or two, right, for each side. I think the Saints are in a spot where I think there's still a lot of faith in Eric McCoy and being one of the better centers in the league. When I say better, I'm talking like above average, like top 15 centers in the league. You can make the case for top 10, maybe. Depends who you're talking to. But really outside of that, it's like, we got unproven when it comes to Fuaga, who I guess we'll talk about it since I just brought it up. Left practice today with some stiffness in his back or tightness in his back. It's not believed to be anything like super serious. I know people who are on Twitter, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, now X, freak out when you see so and so left practice. Rightfully so. But it's back tightness. DA confirmed that it was something that he was even feeling before practice started, but he was hoping just to kind of stretch it out. And it didn't really stretch out. So I wouldn't read too much into it. Don't think it's anything crazy. So yeah, there's that. But you have an unproven guy, yes, first round pick. Yes, very big, high hopes for him, but unproven. That's a question mark. Left guard, question mark. Center might be your strongest spot, right? Right guard, Cesar Ruiz, is a roller coaster. And I really hope that we see the Cesar Ruiz that got a lot of praise, last year, the year before, and started making some strides. But he's one of those frustrating players where you start seeing the strides and you see the potential, and then all of a sudden you're like, where'd it go?
Yeah.
And that's just the type of NFL career he's had to this point. Yeah. Maybe everything clicks this year and it's better. Or maybe we have stretches of 3 or 4 games where Ruiz looks like a guy who deserved to be a first-round pick, and then followed by 3 or 4 games of going, what? And then last, and certainly not least, is the right tackle position. So let's talk about Trevor Penning, as Anna just said, address the elephant in the room. It's not like a small elephant. It's bigger than the room. It might take up Bob's place. It might stretch from Bob's place to my place and then take up my place. Not that I live in a much bigger place than Bob, but it might stretch the entire East Coast from right outside of Pittsburgh to right outside of Charlotte, because it's a huge elephant in the room. And going, and look, this is a guy that you and I both really liked on tape his draft year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you and I both said he's very raw, but he had the physical, he had the nastiness that we liked, and thought that he was going to be a good fit. It hasn't worked so far. I think that I have defended him more than a lot of people have. I think I've given my thoughts, and I'll share them again, that, rookie year didn't really get the opportunity. Second year struggled, and then and that was weird. And I don't think enough of us talk about how weird that was. Not weird in like we've never seen that before, but strange in a way. It was like, okay, well, he got benched, but it's not like he was super outperformed, right?
Mm.
Like, it was one of those, like, okay, well, I could see a situation where he does get the opportunity again, and especially being a young guy that you invested a first round pick, and it just never happened. And it went to and then there was injuries, and he was so far down the depth chart, he wasn't even coming in to play backup snaps when somebody got hurt. That's what I mean.
13 offensive snaps in the last 11 games after he got benched. And this was for one of the worst lines in the National Football League that dealt with injuries, subpar play, and ineffective play all across the front. And Trevor Penning couldn't get into the game. Essentially, it was a healthy scratch. That should have, and I've written about it many times, but that should have raised more red flags to everyone than it actually did.
Oh, yeah. I still just find it strange. And you and I have talked about this a lot over probably the last 3 years, I'd say, is when something really started clicking in my brain, and it became a normal conversation between you and I, both on and off the air. What the hell is wrong with teams now? Like, they draft a guy, they expect the guy to be like all pro caliber out the gate, and if the guy doesn't flourish within the first 2 years, he's cut or he's traded. I'm like, what the hell happened to like player development? It's
It's an
not
instant
just
gratification society, Brendan. I mean, that's just not the NFL. That's just not sports in general. It's literally everywhere. If you aren't great, it's not fair, but it's reality that if you aren't great immediately, then you're trash immediately.
No, and I mean, I've used this example as well before. Is why is Amazon such a profitable and popular thing? Because I get my stuff in 2 days, like max. Like, I can order something. I've had times I've ordered something at 11 a.m. and it's on my doorstep by 2. Like, that is insane. But that's the same thing in the NFL. Is I expect to draft the guy, and I expect the finished product at my doorstep in 2 years, or that's it.
Let's look at this realistically, though, Brendan. Trevor Penning has shown no, to use your comparison, he's shown no potential to be an Amazon. Trevor Penning is like the Pony Express on a 3-legged horse, or a smoke signal. A smoke signal in the rain. Fire ain't getting lit. But my point is Trevor Penning, and I've defended him like you. Maybe not as long as you have, but I have been a Trevor Penning defender for those first 2 years, for at least portions. But I'm seeing a player now. I forget zero development. I'm seeing an absolute regression. I mean, this man, and I wasn't the only one to make the comparison, but coming out of college, Kyle Turley, a friend of ours, Brendan and myself, had him on the show a few times. Kyle Turley, if you're watching, my friend, I owe you an apology for the massive disrespect of making the comparison between you and Trevor Penning coming out of college. Now, again, I wasn't the only one to make this comparison. A lot of people did, because Trevor Penning had that mean, dominant demeanor that would he would just look to destroy people. He was what they call a finisher as far as a blocker is concerned. Now I feel like those comparisons were an absolute insult to our friend Kyle Turley, because like I said, Trevor Penning has just regressed. We always knew that footwork was a problem. I knew that when I watched his film coming out of the draft, but it's gotten worse. He's absolutely helpless against speed rushers, especially when they hit off his inside counter, off of his inside shoulder. And his footwork is so bad that his power, his strength, thought to be his biggest asset, is now completely nullified because people are just getting up into his pads so quickly, standing him straight up and bullying him backward. They aren't beating him with just finesse on every play anymore. They're beating him with power too. And someone commented on one of the articles that I wrote in the last couple of days. Well, Penning only had one penalty on Saturday. I still have to laugh about it. Like it's hard to get flagged for holding when you're whiffing on blocks and people are running by you like you're standing still. Trevor Penning is an absolute liability. But here's the scariest thing for me. Penning has to work out in some way, shape, or form, because there's no answers on the roster. You think you're going to turn to Landon Young? We've seen how that story plays out. Not well. You think you're going to turn to Oli Udoh? I had high hopes for Big U coming in, but the reality is, he of his, I think, 5-year career, he's only been a starter for one, and he looked just as bad when he came into the game on Saturday. You think there's everybody is saying, "Oh, cut Penning and go sign a right tackle." Who are you going to sign? David Bakhtiari, Dwayne Brown, they're left tackles. You're not going to bring them in off the street. And by the way, each are way past their prime. Still probably better than Penning as a football player, I grant you. You're going to bring them in off the street and plug them in at right tackle, position they've never played? Doubtful. You're going to sign them, bring them in, put them in at left tackle, move Fuaga over, who's just getting acclimated to the left tackle position. Now you're going to tell your rookie first-round pick, we're going to move you to the right side. Doubtful. Okay, you look at the right tackles available. DJ Humphries. Okay, he started quite a few games for an absolutely awful Arizona Cardinals offensive line where he couldn't hold on to the starting job. Cameron Fleming, journeyman throughout his career. You already signed one of those guys in Udoh. Donovan Smith, he's played left tackle and right tackle in his career. Most remember him with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Maybe you want to click on that film and watch Cam Jordan absolutely feast on Donovan Smith. So my point is, I know a lot of you say the solution is go sign a right tackle. There's nobody to sign. There's nobody on the roster. Who are you going to trade for? As we know, watching these, the Saints offensive line, as you put it, Brendan, devolve from one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best, to now one of the worst, if not the worst. The point there is offensive linemen are such a valuable commodity that do you really think that if a team had a good offense, a good right tackle, or a good right or left tackle, they're going to be so anxious to trade him? Doubtful. The answer has to be the answer right now is not Trevor Penning, but the answer has to be Trevor Penning, or this team is in deep, deep, deep trouble.
Bob, how many cheeseburgers is it going to take to get you to about 300? You think the footwork's still good enough? I know you're a little on the short side, but
I'm vertically challenged. I am. Cheeseburgers that get me to 300. You know how fast my metabolism is. You've seen me eat, but you also know how thin I am. So I don't know that we could get me there, my friend. I'm sorry.
You got a better chance of me doing it? Okay. Dang. I haven't played offensive line since like freshman year of high school, man. I don't know. I'm just playing. But no, what you just said is the absolute truth, and it's the terrifying truth that regardless of how bad this goes or good, you can have that little bit of hope that maybe it turns around and something clicks, or whatever. That's it. Like this is what you're gonna get. And I know Anna just said in the comments, like, what are they gonna do? You can't go into the season like this. You
right.
kind of have to.
Right.
You have to. Like, there's no other solution unless, and you alluded to it already, unless you go, you know what, Landon, like, just go for it. And if that happens, Trevor Penning's getting cut.
Yeah.
Like, he's not even staying on the roster.
But again, we've seen Landon Young play football. And I use that term loosely. I don't understand why Landon Young is on this team at all. Trevor Penning has a job, only has a job, not because of his playing resume. He has a job still because he's a first-round pick. Landon Young has no such pedigree. I cannot figure out what Clint Kubiak sees in Landon Young. But, I mean, yeah, hey, whatever. But Landon Young isn't the answer. To those, and you're right, for those that are saying, oh, the Saints can pick up a tackle or two when other teams make their cuts. I'm sure they will. I know they have to be looking.
There's a reason they got cut, though.
Exactly. You're now banking on begging for other teams' rejects, hoping that you're going to throw something against the wall and it sticks. It might happen. It's happened before. Not just throughout the NFL, but the odds of it happening are extremely thin.
Yeah. Well, and it's not. How do I put this? I'm trying to reach in the back of my mind for an example here. Even like preseason heroes, like preseason greats that end up getting cut because they just don't fit the system, have been picked up other places, and sometimes they have had a nice career. Usually 9 times out of 10, actually, probably 999 out of 1,000 times, they don't have a great career. Like, there's gonna be that 1 in 1,000 that has like a really good career. When I say nice career, they stick in the league for a couple years. They have some nice moments. They score a few touchdowns, whatever. But there's nothing insane. And for me, like, examples that I can use, like Taysom Hill doesn't happen every day, right? Taysom Hill was like this preseason darling. The Saints pick him up. But that only worked because he wasn't picked up to be a quarterback. He was picked up to be whatever Taysom Hill is.
He was picked up to be Taysom Hill, right?
Right. Another example that comes to mind, another Saint, is Austin Carr was that preseason darling receiver for New England, and everybody was like, oh, he's going to be the next great slot receiver for Tom Brady. And he got cut, and he came to New Orleans, and, like, that's a prime example of what I consider a nice career. Like, played 4 or 5 years, never did anything outstanding, but he stuck around in the league, he stuck with a team, he did his job. Right, but wasn't a starter. Like, I'm willing to bet some money that Carr probably didn't even have 20 receptions a year. Like, that might have been like Austin Carr's like max. But anyway, I digress. The odds of them picking up a guy like that and him being an instant impact starter is like 0.00001. So yes, you're gonna let it ride. With your first round pick at right tackle and hoping for the best. I mean, but to the point of everybody in the comments, to your point, Bob, the tape especially that we've seen in training camp has not looked good. The tape we saw against Arizona did not look good at all. It's alarming. It's concerning. But there are no other viable options right now. And isn't it weird to say, like, I had just made the comparison, like, everybody wants everybody to pan out, right? On the complete opposite spectrum of that, isn't it weird to feel like I cannot cut this guy? Because that's kind of where the Saints are. Is like they can't. Yeah. They can't cut him. And I said if he were to get beat up by Landon Young, he probably does get cut. But I could also see a situation where the Saints go, we have so much invested that we can't. Like, he's just going to be the backup. It's a weird spot to be. So that's biggest concern for this team. I don't really want to talk. Like, we could talk the entire offensive line, but obviously Trevor Penning's been the hot topic, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you made the comparison to Ruiz, and I've called him a human turnstile many, many times. He hasn't been playing well. Lucas Patrick had a couple nice reps against Arizona, but he has not taken. Nobody has taken control of that left guard competition. Which you need that to happen. So you can establish at least a little bit of continuity up front. And now you have Fuaga going down, and we don't. You're right. We don't think it's anything serious, but what if it is? This entire Trevor Penning is the deserved scapegoat this week. But this entire offensive line is just downright terrifyingly bad right now.
DJ says he's a guard. We've talked about that before. I don't think you can bump him inside.
Not at this point. If you were going to do it and get effective play out of him this season, you needed to do it as soon as the offseason started. So everybody that's saying that DJ, you're right. Trevor Penning probably is a guard, but you're not going to make that move right now and expect it to work. To the other people that are just assuming that they need to move Trevor Penning to guard and expect it to work like that, this isn't Madden. Brennan and I say this, it feels like weekly. You can't just move a human player from position to position. Penning has already been moved once. And it's not working out, obviously. We hope that changes, but there's no indication that it's going to. You're not going to move him to guard now and expect him to pan out instantly. And that's kind of irrelevant for the point of discussion anyway. The point of discussion is the awful play and the lack of solution at right tackle. If you move Penning to guard, whether or not that works is fine. You still have a major hole at right tackle that you have not filled.
Absolutely right. Let's talk about other concerns, if any, and then get into preseason week 2. I think the easiest way to do this is just talk about preseason week 2 and the things that we need to see in preseason week 2 because of the concerns that we have, because we are running out of time. Preseason week 1 showed us a little bit. You expect to see a little bit more of the starters in preseason week 2, potentially. I know a lot of people are hoping for that, Bob, because they want to see some form of production when it comes to the Saints offense. So for you, how important is it, if at all, that the starters score some points?
I don't know about points. Well, I mean, to finish drives, yeah. And if, when you finish a drive, you put points on the board. So I guess it is very important. The fact that they had to cancel the practices, the joint practices with the 49ers this week hurts both teams. I understand the reasoning behind it. Both teams, the 49ers are the ones that made the call, but the Saints are almost as equally, beat up from an injury standpoint. So from health-wise, it was the wise decision to make, but it really hurts your first and second team units because these joint practices are where they get the majority of their work in. So now, if I'm Dennis Allen, and especially if I'm on offense with Clint Kubiak, I want more reps out of this first team offense. Especially, we talk about Trevor Penning. Penning needs the work. He needs the reps to hopefully improve. So I want to keep my first team offensive line out there. I want to keep my quarterback out there, because you want your quarterback and your new offensive coordinator to be as much on the same page as possible when it comes to game situation feels. This is what I know my offensive coordinator, from Carr's perspective, this is what I know my offensive coordinator likes to do in this situation. Same thing from Kubiak to Carr's perspective. Just get a better feel for each other in a game situation. But I'd only leave Carr out there if you have your most of, if not all of your starting offensive line. Not as worried about the running backs and the receivers. Carr and those guys can develop their chemistry in the 7-on-7s and then work off to the side. Almost as well. But that's only what I would do as a coach. Dennis Allen has shown the tendency where I would only expect to see the starters for 2 series, maybe 3, and that's a stretch. But if it's me, at least Carr and that first team offensive line play well into the second quarter, if not the entire first half. I need continuity on that side of the ball. That's what I do. I don't think that's what they do.
That's still my biggest concern, and we've talked about it a lot, right, is with a new offensive coordinator, even this being Carr's second year with the Saints, it really is almost like the first, because you have a new system to learn, new dynamic with the receivers, in the sense that when he came in last year, Olave wasn't the number one guy. Rashid Shaheed, we didn't really know what Rashid Shaheed was going to be and what his role was. A.T. Perry was this unproven rookie. He still is a little unproven, but there is new dynamics now. And so I do need to see Derek Carr be effective within the Kubiak system. And it's one thing to get those reports coming out of camp. It's one thing to see some of the throws he's making in camp. It's another thing to see it in the games. And to your point with canceling joint practice, it would have been really nice to see Carr potentially be successful against competition that wasn't his own team, right? Because that you get to measure yourself and go, okay, we did really well against the 49ers, who were an NFC contender in this, and this, and we didn't do well in this, and this. So let's improve on these things, right? That would have gone a long way for, I think, this team as a whole. And they're unfortunate not to have that.
Yeah.
But it's just the way life goes sometimes, right? Can't do anything about it. So with that, I do think it's going to be very important for this team. One thing I do want to see in preseason week 2 is see the team get into the end zone. And I know it's a big ask. And I'm not saying you got to keep the starters out till you do it, because it's not Madden. But I would love to see the team move the ball effectively and put some points on the board. Maybe I'm being over ambitious and asking for a touchdown. Maybe I should just be asking for a field goal. Like, I don't care. I need to see the team effectively move the football, and ultimately put some points on the board. I mean, I would like to see Carr kept upright. I'd like to see some improvement from the offensive line. There's things like that, but you can't be too picky and choosy in preseason and what you want to see. Because I could sit here and tell you guys, oh, I want to see Olave have, a good outing. I want to see this. I want to see that. And then it comes out, oh, like Olave played like 2 snaps. Woohoo. Like that. You just never know. So ultimately,
you do. Speaking of Olave, you do bring up a position that I do want to address too. I'm going to write about it before the game on Sunday. I don't know whether it's tomorrow, but sometime in the next couple of days. The wide receiver spot. I'm with you. I wouldn't expect Olave to get any more than 1 or 2 series. Shaheed tweaked that hamstring, so you wouldn't expect a lot of action from him. A.T. Perry suffered a leg injury that's probably going to keep him out of action a week or 2. He's going to be ready for the regular season. Doubt he plays against the 49ers. This is a good time for the rest of that. We just named 3 guys, Olave, Shaheed, and Perry, that we pretty much knew what we were going to get out of. I now need to see something from Cedric Wilson. I need to see something from Bub Means. I need to see something from Equanimeous St. Brown. I don't know if Mason Tipton and that hamstring is going to be ready to go, which is a shame because he's been a training camp sensation. We saw some nice things from Samson Nakua. Which one of those guys are going to step up? There's no clear number 4. Well, I think A.T. Perry has grabbed a hold of the number 3 job and has pretty much secured it if he's healthy. But what about the rest of the depth chart? How much of a concern is that to you, Brendan? Based off of the names that I've seen, St. Brown been hurt, Bub Means been hurt, Cedric Wilson been hurt. Are you just like me and waiting for at least 1 or 2 of these guys to step up?
Yeah, I mean, I even said it going into camp. I thought it was a concern, the receiver position, just because outside of A.T. Perry, like after that on the depth chart, it was just so it's funny because last year the Saints had a ton of receivers where you're like, yeah, that would be a good guy to be the last guy. And now you're looking around, you're like, man, I could really use one of those guys in camp. Like, where are these guys at? Different philosophies, different things. I get it. But at the end of the day, I'm concerned, right? Like to your point, there hasn't been anybody really kind of step up and take the job. Kind of like what DA was saying about safety across from Tyrann Mathieu. Nobody's really stepped up and been like, this is my job. Like receiver 4 is me. That's concerning. Safety's concerning for the same aspect, and I know we're running out of time here, but
but we have to address the defense at least a little bit.
yeah, so let's go ahead and segue into that off that. Like that same conversation we just had about receiver, like nobody's stepping up and saying like this is my spot. Nobody's doing that at safety either.
No.
And Bob and I absolutely hate doing this, right? We absolutely dread saying I told you so to people, especially Bob. Bob is one of those guys that just never ever pats himself on the back. He never wants to rub it in people's faces. I'm the same way though. When I'm right, I like to let people know that I'm right. But we told you a week ago that the Justin Simmons thing was not going to have an answer overnight. He was going to take other calls. And look, he did. It's unfortunate that he did, and he's signing with the Atlanta Falcons. That hurts a little bit for Saints fans, right? But we knew that's how it was going to play out.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Are there other safeties still on the market that they could look at?
Sure, Micah Hyde comes to mind, but all
down.
The big name safeties that I was talking about 2 weeks ago are now pretty much off the board.
It's dwindled down a lot, but there are still certainly some guys that even this late in camp, if you wanted to bring in, you could. Micah Hyde being a good example there. You and I both like Jordan Howden. You and I both thought his versatility was going to be a big key for this team. It was going to be actually the key for him to make the team last year. But he didn't just make the team. He actually had, some impact on the team a year ago. Well, it's a little concerning that he's not making that year 2 jump in camp and being like, okay, Jordan Howden's the guy. He's number 1 on the depth chart, but DA's been pretty vocal about, we still need to see some more.
And he's right. It's also very clear that when the Saints made the decision to cut Marcus May, and it was the right decision to make, that they were not necessarily handing the job to Jordan Howden, but certainly making it his job to lose. They love Jonathan Abram. God knows why, because I don't understand it. They signed Will Harris, who I still believe is a great fit for this defense. And it's going to be, we're going to continue to see a rotation between those three, probably well into the 49er game. So that's a position to watch. But you're right. Howden, Abram, Harris, they all had some moments against Arizona anyway that made me anyway go, this is not good. For a secondary that has such a talented cornerback unit, and now you have Rico Payton making some plays, looking like he might be the next Isaac Yiadom. You cannot have a glaring weak spot in your secondary for the quarterbacks to pick on. And right now you have to say, it's early on, I grant you, and things could change drastically. But early on, you look at this secondary and who is likely going to make the team. And you're looking at a combination of Howden, Harris, or Abram opposite of Tyrann Mathieu, and you're like, I don't see the playmaker there. I don't see the guy who's not going to consistently give up big plays. And this is a concern to me right now. It's the biggest concern defensively coming out of the Arizona game is that spot. I thought the defensive line outside of the invisible man, Isaiah Foskey, who that's what I'm going to start to call him, the backup linebackers, after Willie Gay left the game, you saw a lot of the same traits that Dennis Allen defenses have struggled against. Dennis Ritter broke containment a couple times, made plays with his legs. Clayton Tune got out into the open a couple times, missed tackles from the safeties, backup cornerbacks, and backup linebackers. But again, even though the backup, I thought this team had better depth at linebacker and still think they could. As far as the 1s and 2s go, the first and second strings, safety is what concerns me the most on this defense.
I'd say for me, ultimately, this is one of the deeper Saints defenses over the last 3 years. I think the last time we could really say this about a Saints defense was that 18, 19, 20 teams. those teams that were actually competing to be NFC champions. That other side safety still concerning. What's interesting, though, is if for whatever reason Howden doesn't work or you feel the need to make a change, you do have a lot of versatility in that secondary, right? Like you could definitely flip some guys around. Now, I know Alontae Taylor, they're saying he's really embracing that slot rule. You probably don't want to mess that up, but that's a guy you could bump out. Right?
Yeah, and Alontae Taylor's having a hell of a camp, man. I'll tell you what.
You could do that. Kool-Aid, I think, is an interesting guy too, just because of his size. Like, could he make the switch if you needed him to? Maybe. Do you want to put that in the hands of a rookie? Probably not. But we've seen the Saints get creative in years past on the defensive side and, how they've aligned things. And I had to tip my cap to Dennis Allen earlier in his tenure with the Saints as a defensive coordinator. When you started seeing the Saints play a lot of 3 safety, it's kind of hard to do that when you're questioning who your second safety is. But you've seen, to my point, you've seen them get creative and do different things and throw different looks consistently. And that like kind of 3 safety look was really interesting for the Saints some of those years. It wasn't the most effective thing sometimes, but it was interesting. It made you think, especially when you rewatched film. I could see the Saints get creative. For me, defensively, the corner seems like a really good spot. So there's not as much of a rush or a pressure for Kool-Aid McKinstry to really like show up. But he's a second-round pick that should have been a first-round pick with a first-round grade, and I want to see him show up.
Yeah.
So I do want to see him play well against, a higher level of talent, being like backups or guys that are going to be like 3rd, 4th, 5th receivers on a roster. So that's kind of the player that I'm kind of targeting and watching this week. It's a little bit of a safe choice, if you will, but he should get a handful of reps. And I kind of just want to see where he's at more than anything. Because I do think he has the opportunity, if not this year, obviously in the years forward, to be an impact type of player for this team. And especially with Marshawn Lattimore and the injury and the lingering and whatnot, he's going to get some opportunities. I wouldn't be shocked to see if he got some opportunities against some first-team run. Just depending on how they want to, play it out against the Niners. So,
and that's a heck of a test. You're not going to play Lattimore. I'd be surprised. Yeah, they're still bringing Paulson and Debo along slowly too. So I would absolutely start the game with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Alontae Taylor as my cornerbacks, and I would try to match Kool-Aid up with Debo Samuel as much as possible. See what you got, Rook. It's preseason. Now is the time to see where some of these guys are at. I completely agree with you. But for me, the defensive player, individual defensive player I'm going to be watching closely is Chase Young. He's been creating a lot of disruption lately. I thought him, Peyton Turner, Brian Brissy, Carl Granderson, Nathan Shepard, I thought they played outstanding as a unit, against the Arizona Cardinals, really dominated the trenches. But Chase Young was standing out in practices consistently for about a week and a half before that. In other words, he seems to be trending in the right direction of that consistent disruptive presence on the edge that's going to give Cam Jordan single team blocking, that's going to give Granderson single team blocking, and it's just going to create additional chaos in opposing backfields. 49ers have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. I don't know who if they're going to play many of their starters, or if so, how long. But as long as the 49ers starters are out there, I want Chase Young out there because I want my iron against their iron.
It's fair. That's fair. On the offensive side, we talked so much about the offensive line. I don't really want to go that direction. We've talked about the quarterbacks. I don't want to go that direction. You kind of hinted at the receivers and just seeing someone step up, just kind of in general. But for me, I guess I've already kind of alluded to it, and it's kind of the cheap way out. But I just want to see the offense show unity is a weird word to throw around, but I do want to see this team kind of look like a together unit because they didn't against on paper, because we haven't said that yet today. On paper, one of the worst teams in football. They did not look collective together. You can blame some on the offensive line for that, but they didn't look together. I want to see the offense look together. Before we sign off for the night, Bob, offensively, what you want to see?
Pretty much. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about the offensive line. I'm sick and tired of talking about big fat guys, but they have to establish some kind of control at the line. Forget Trevor Penning individually. This unit has to establish some kind of control up front. Yeah, it's easy to talk about. You want to see more from Haener. You want to see more from Rattler. I want to see more from Carr because he's my starter. I want to see the type of play action role, the play of the night offensively for me. Saints against Cardinals. I know the long pass from Haener to A.T. Perry, that was a pretty play, but the play that made me grin from ear to ear was also in the second quarter. Haener was in the game. It was a play action bootleg rollout to the right, where Haener got outside the pocket. Very nice play fake, decent move blocking up front. And Haener had an opportunity, perfectly surveyed the field from deep to short, and hit Dallin Holker on the run. While he was moving, hit Dallin Holker in stride, for a key first down in a big game, moderate sized game. I want to see those kind of plays from Derek Carr. That's the kind of thing I am looking for because that's the Clint Kubiak offense.
Well, there you have it, guys. We thank you a lot for tuning into another episode of the Bayou Blitz, even though we have to move space and time and all that good stuff, even though we did pretty good there for a while. Bob, you're going to be busy, right? We got a preseason game, coming up training camp. And before you know it, we're going to be playing real football. So you're going to be super busy over the next 2-3 weeks, pumping out articles, continuing to do your thing here with the Bayou Blitz. So for the people who, for whatever reason, don't follow you in your work, where can they keep up with you and the busy life that is Bob Rose?
Folks, thank you for being patient with our schedule shifting, this week. We appreciate you. And, for you fans of the Bayou Blitz, you can follow the Bayou Blitz Facebook page and the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. So please give that a follow if you aren't already. You can follow me personally, Bob Rose, on Facebook, at BobbyR2613 on Twitter. I do post all of my articles, and Brendan's right. I'll be putting out, 1 or 2 a day, from now through the regular season and beyond. You can catch those. I post them on my personal pages as well. And thank you for the following if you're already doing so. And remember, especially with the football season looming ever so closer, get other Saints fans involved. Talk to them about your podcast, your Bayou Blitz, your Saints News Network. We do this for you, but we do it for all Saints fans. So, there might be people out there that aren't aware of the Bayou Blitz, aren't aware of Brendan Boylan, aren't aware of Bob Rose, et cetera, et cetera. Educate them. You guys have been so great to us individually and as a grouping, for a number of years now. So bring more into the fam. We already consider you family. Let's enlarge our family a little bit more, especially as we head closer to the regular season.
Absolutely. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. You guys know some of the other endeavors that I've found myself in over the last few years. So continue to follow me and all of that. For Bob Rose, for the Bayou Blitz podcast, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next week on a Wednesday.
We think.
That is fair with our lives. That is totally fair. But we will see you sometime next week to talk about preseason week 2 as we continue to inch closer and closer to the regular season.
Wait a minute. We got a game coming up on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, and you followers of us know that throughout the season, most weeks anyway, we give you a pregame show almost every week, and as often as possible, we give you a postgame. I don't know that we'll do. I don't know that I feel like doing a postgame on a preseason show. Brendan, you up for a pregame show?
Sure.
Preseason pregame show?
Why not? We'll get some of the bumps out ourselves too. We'll get a short one. It might not be right at kickoff. It might not be right before, but we'll put out something on Sunday for you guys leading up to kickoff. How about that? So we won't even make you wait a whole 7 days till you hear our beautiful voices or see our beautiful faces again. Just depends on whether you're a YouTube watcher or whether you're a Spotify listener. I don't know. But you will hear from us again here in the coming days. So until Sunday, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and we'll see you in a few days for another episode of the Bayou Blitz. See you then.